Bryan Kohberger was apprehended in the Idaho student murders case, primarily through the use of DNA evidence and surveillance footage. Specifically, a statistical match of DNA found on a knife sheath at the crime scene linked Kohberger to the victims' deaths. Surveillance footage also showed a white Hyundai Elantra matching Kohberger's car near the crime scene around the time of the murders. Additionally, phone records indicated Kohberger's phone was turned off shortly before the attack. Kohberger allegedly returned to the crime scene approximately 5 hours after the initial incident. So how was Bryan Kohberger on police radar? Let's get into the details. Suspected killer Bryan Kohberger was not on the radar of police in Moscow, Idaho, when he was twice stopped for traffic violations on a freeway in Indiana. The body cam videos of the two traffic stops circulated after Kohberger's arrest for the murder of 4 University of Idaho students. Kohberger was traveling by car from Moscow to his parents' home in Pennsylvania. He was pulled over once for speeding and once for tailgating. That had many speculating if police suspected Kohberger at the time and had him pulled over to keep an eye on him. Moscow police at the time did not suspect Kohberger for the Idaho murders, so what changed? A Moscow police detective revealed that the first time he heard Kohberger's name was on December 19, 2022. That was just over a month after the murders and 4 days after the traffic stops in Indiana. Detective Brett Payne said he first heard Kohberger's name when the FBI called regarding the investigative genetic genealogy that was being conducted. Investigators were trying to determine who left DNA on a knife sheath found at the crime scene. Detective Payne said all the FBI conveyed to Moscow police at that time was Kohberger's name. Once we received his name, we set about basically an independent verification of whether or not he was involved in this crime, Payne stated. In a meeting the next day, Payne said investigators met with the FBI over Teams and further discussed a family tree and how that played into the Kohberger identification. They essentially worked their way through the family tree and arrived at a conclusion that Bryan Kohberger was a person we should look into as a tip, Payne told the court. Other DNA at the scene. Payne was also questioned about other evidence found at the crime scene, including a sample they call unknown male B. That came from a blood spot on the handrail between the first and second floors of the home. Payne said that because they already had a possible match on the DNA on the knife sheath, they held off on testing unknown male B until a later time. The Kohberger investigation. After police learned of the possible Kohberger connection on the knife sheath, they determined Kohberger had been previously pulled over by WSU police. That proved to investigators that Kohberger drove a white Hyundai Elantra, which is the vehicle make and model captured on video leaving the neighborhood of the crime scene. The police in Moscow, Idaho, where the killings took place, have said they happened sometime around 4 a.m. on November 13, 2022. The victims are Madison Mogan, 21, Kaylee Goncalves, 21, Xana Kernodle, 20, and Ethan Chapin, 20. They had spent a typical Saturday night out near the university campus and returned to the house in the early hours of Sunday. Among the evidence found is a leather knife sheath that was found on a bed in one of the 2 bedrooms where the murders took place. Mr. Kohberger's DNA, which was tested after his arrest, proved to be a statistical match with samples from the sheath. They also said that Mr. Kohberger purchased a K-bar knife, a sheath, and a sharpener from Amazon in late March 2022, about 7 months before the murders. Investigators have said that they used cell phone tower data to track where Mr. Kohberger's mobile phone was on the night of the killings, and that surveillance video showed a white vehicle like Mr. Kohberger's repeatedly circling around the victim's house that night. Mr. Kohberger's lawyers have said he was driving outside of Moscow on the morning of the murders. The attack. The victims had returned to the house by about 2 a.m., the authorities said. More than an hour later, a white car appeared in surveillance video taken by cameras in the neighborhood. The victim's house was on a dead-end street, but the white car, identified by investigators as a Hyundai Elantra, could be seen passing by the house several times, including at 4:04 a.m., when the car performed a 3-point turn in the street near the house. One of the victims, Ms. Kernodle, appears to have been awake at the time and had just received a DoorDash order for takeout food. Her phone indicated that she had been using the TikTok app, investigators said. Dylan Mortensen, one of the surviving housemates, reported being awake around that time as well. She told the police that she had heard sounds upstairs that she thought were made by Ms. Goncalves playing with her dog. She told investigators that she also heard what sounded like crying coming from Ms. Kernodle's room, down the hall from her own on the second floor, along with a male voice saying something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." At 4:17 a.m., according to investigators, a security camera in the area captured distorted audio of what sounded like a whimper and a loud thud. A dog was heard barking. Miss Mortensen said that she looked out her bedroom door to check on the noises and was stunned to see a man wearing black clothing and a mask who walked past her toward a sliding glass door at the back of the house. She tried texting and calling some of the roommates who were killed, but didn't get an answer. She exchanged messages with another roommate downstairs, Bethany Funky, writing that she was freaking out after seeing the person outside her door. Miss Funky told Miss Strord Mortensen to run down to her, and they stayed together until the following morning. In the early morning hours, Miss Funky called her mother and father, and Miss Mortensen logged onto Instagram and sent messages on Snapchat and by text, according to court papers filed by Mr. Kohberger's lawyers. At 11:56 a.m., more than 7 hours after the intruder had been seen, Miss Funky called 911 after a friend arrived at the house and discovered one of the victims. The 911 call conveyed a frantic effort to understand what had transpired, with several people speaking to the 911 operator at different times. One person said a roommate was drunk last night and she's not waking up. Finding the prime suspect, a car, phone records, and a family tree. Investigators who arrived at the crime scene found the knife sheath with a U.S. Marine Corps logo lying on the bed next to Ms. Mogan, who was found dead in the same room as her longtime friend, Ms. Goncalves. Later, as investigators began searching for the car seen in the video footage, the police at Washington State University found a white Elantra registered there and identified the owner as Mr. Kohberger. But Mr. Kohberger did not become focal point until several weeks later. The DNA from the knife sheath did not match anyone already in law enforcement databases, so investigators sent it for further analysis. That eventually yielded a more extensive profile that the authorities could use for genetic genealogy with the help of consumer DNA databases. FBI investigators have disclosed that they compared the DNA sample not only with those in databases that allow law enforcement use, but also with others that prohibit it. That violated key parameters of federal policy. Shortly before Christmas, investigators obtained mobile phone records showing that on the night of the killings, Mr. Kohberger's phone stopped connecting to the cellular network at 2:47 a.m. when he was in Pullman. When the phone reconnected with the network at 4:48 a.m., it was south of Moscow. It then followed a route back to Pullman. Later that morning, Mr. Kohberger's phone was in Moscow, in the area near the crime scene, investigators said. The phone's history also reflected that it had been in the area of the house 12 times in the months before the murders, according to the affidavit. Prosecutors said they planned to show the jury a selfie that Mr. Kohberger took about 6 hours after the murders, in which he is smiling, wearing a buttoned shirt and giving a thumbs up in front of a shower. They may use the picture in part to try to corroborate Miss Mortensen's account that the man she saw in the apartment had bushy eyebrows. By the end of December, Mr. Kohberger had returned to his parents' house in Pennsylvania. He and his father had driven on a cross-country road trip and were pulled over twice for tailgating. Each time, they were let go with a warning. At that point, Mr. Kohberger had a new Washington State license plate on his car, which he had obtained 5 days after the killings, records show. The arrest. The police tested DNA samples taken from trash found at the family's Pennsylvania home and then arrested Mr. Kohberger before dawn on December 30th, 2022. He was later extradited to Idaho. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more content and updates. If you enjoyed our content, please like and subscribe. Please don't forget to hit the notification bell for new uploads. In the meantime, stay safe and stay aware.